Hello and welcome to another battle report. This is a 2,500 point match of Warhammer Fantasy between Anthony from the Sustainable Center's Orcs and Goblins army and his Bretonnians. I took control of the Orcs and Goblins and he manned the Bretonnians, and we used all of the new terrain that was recently featured in one of his videos to construct a more flavorful board, as we've been fighting over the same scraps of woods and same decrepit hills now for some time. So we set up a more engaging battlefield and played both of his armies against each other. Here you can see the left flank of my forces. I had 5 wolf riders, a goblin wolf chariot. That wolf chariot that's half painted and just has the wolves, that is actually a snotling pump wagon. I have 40 black orcs with the banner of eternal flame, not very relevant for this battle. On the hill I had 3 bolt throwers, a horde of 40 savage orcs with a black orc BSB with the 5-up ward save and a 3-up armor save with the enchanted shield, and then a level 4 orc shaman with the lucky head giving the entire unit a 5-up ward save and a dispel scroll. There are 39 night goblins behind them in bus formation with a level 2 goblin shaman, and then a horde of 50 squig herds, 14 herders, 36 squigs. And then on the right, another 5 wolf riders, a doom diver, a rock lobber, and another bolt thrower. There are 3 Pegasus Knights on the left flank of the Bretonnians, and then a big bus of men-at-arms led by a damsel with the prayer icon, so they'll have a 5-up or a 6-up, 5-up versus strength 5 or higher ward save during combat. There's a small bus of questing knights, the big character bus of realm knights with the level 4 prophetess. The BSB has a 1-up rerollable in the biting blade. The other paladin has a 1-up rerollable with the sword of might, so he'll be strength 5. And then the lord with heroic killing blow and the heartwood lance, so he's rerolling failed wounds. The errantry bus is to the right of them with the banner of errantry, which makes them strength 4 on the charge, so strength 6 with lances. Behind them, 2 trebuchets. And then on the far right, hidden behind that tower in the last picture, 5 mounted yeomen. For this battle, Anthony was using the Lore of Heavens on his level 4, and then I had, Big Wog and Little Wog on the level 4 and level 2, Beasts on the level 2 Damsel in with the men-at-arms. Here you can see the total, the total disposition of the board. We like to think of this one as, this is the Bretonnian keep, and maybe there were orcs outside for a while or a goblin tribe, but really they weren't getting up to much. And then this shaman moved in and they started creeping up on the Bretonnian land, moving their mud huts closer and closer, until finally, this Bretonnian lord had a pheasant hunt this morning, and the constant ooga-chaka of the savage orcs was keeping him up at night, and that just, unacceptable. Mobilizes the Bretonnian force, and the orcs, they love a good crumping, so they can't resist battle. I like to think that the black orcs for this were just kind of, begrudgingly accompanying the mud-covered savages into combat. After Vanguard moves, the Wolf Riders advanced. The Mounted Yeomen stayed pretty much where they were. The Wolf Riders advanced, and the Pegasus Knights, I think, just either stayed exactly where they were or nudged a little to the right. Can't really remember. Orcs had first turn as the Bretonnian army prayed. The Wolf Riders on the left rolled Animosity and then rolled a 6, so they had to move up and then charge. They moved up and charged into the flank of the Pegasus Knights. And then I declared a charge with the Goblin Wolf Riders on the Mounted Yeomen, who made a stand and shoot, didn't kill anybody, and then, held. Otherwise, the entire army advanced forward, like so. The pump wagon moved up a random amount behind that tower, and the wolf chariot circled around it to face outwards, so it's out of line of sight right now for most of the Bretonnian army. In the magic phase, I attempted to cast Sneaky Stabbing on the Black Orcs or the Savages, I forget which, it doesn't really matter. I rolled them a 1 for the Magic Mushroom. When the Night Goblin eats a mushroom, he has to roll a d6. If you roll a 1, the spell fails. So he took a wound, the spell fails, breaks his concentration, can't cast anything else. So he had 1 wound. I then attempted to cast the Foot of Gork with 6 dice on the level 4 shaman, who miscast, did a strength 6 to both wizards. So he made his ward save, and he killed off the level 2 between that and the magic mushroom. I apologize, I had the settings wrong on my camera for the next few pictures, so they're going to be a little blurry. So the foot went off on the errant knights, scattered onto the realm knights, killed 1 realm knight, and then did not roll to continue stomping. Yeah, okay. And then I think in the shooting phase, I dropped a rock lobber on the men-at-arms, killed 1 or 2. Oh, there you go. And then the maybe that was one of the bolt throwers, and then the rock lobber, I suppose, misfired. In close combat, the Wolf Riders failed to cause a wound. Pegasus Knights kill 1. However, I had a charge and flank, so we hold or win combat, and the Pegasus Knights hold. Pardon me. However, the Mounted Yeomen take 2 casualties and kill off the rest of that unit and run them down. Beginning of Bretonnia turn 1, he declares a charge on the Black Orc Horde with the Men-at-Arms, the Realm Knight block with all those characters, and the Errant Knights. We are starting off bloody. We're so close in a meeting engagement. You're 12 inches apart from the opponent along that center line that charges are pretty likely. And this is all of the really nasty combat units on the Black Orcs. It's going to be just bloody right from turn 1. Here you can see the Questing Knights sort of angle in advance. The Mounted Yeomen circle around back to go after the Bolt Throwers. Otherwise, there's not much to move. Yeah, here you can see the Questing Knights advancing. In the magic phase, I think I dispel whatever he tried to cast. It was a very uneventful magic phase. In shooting, he drops a trebuchet on the Savage Orcs, kills 2 of them. The Pegasus Knights in close combat easily beat the Wolf Riders, who flee off the board, and they restrain and reform. And in close combat with the Horde, they do a ton of casualties to the Black Orcs on the charge between all those knights, all those characters, even the Men-at-Arms getting in on the action. Cause a few wounds to each unit in response, but nothing serious. Lose combat, I'm on a Snake Eyes, fail it both times. The first time I rolled a 1 and a 2, and Anthony could only really see the 1, and you could almost hear him like clenching he thought that they were going to hold with insane courage. But no, the Black Orcs break, they get run down, and his units kind of nicely stagger like this, with the Errantry Knights pursuing the furthest, the Realm Knights pursuing only a few inches behind them, and then the Men-at-Arms going the slowest. So here's what the board looks like at the end of Bretonnia turn 1. Orcs and Goblins turn 2. The Night Goblins have failed their animosity check, but roll a 6, so they must charge. They go into the front of the Men-at-Arms. The Savages declare a charge in the flank of the Men-at-Arms. The Wolf Chariot declares a charge on the rear of the Errantry block, and the Pump Wagon successfully moves into the side. That's pretty good. The Pump Wagon is equipped with exploding spores, so its first round of impact hits will ignore armor saves, and it's strength 4 because it didn't pay for the upgrade to make it strength 5. So he's only going to be getting 6 up ward saves instead of the 5 up ward save for strength 5 or higher. So hopefully going to do some damage there. And then the Squigs just angle to face the rest of the fighting. They can't make it through those buildings, and I don't really feel like moving in and moving out or anything like that, so I just angle to go around them. So here's what this combat looks like. In the magic phase, I get off Here We Go, irresistibly, and lose 3 wizard levels in the miscast results. So I lose Here We Go. I lose everything, I believe, except one of the direct damage spells, so nothing really serious. Might have been like Fists of Orc or something like that. It was it didn't come didn't affect the rest of the game going forward. But I lost Here We Go and all the other good Foot and all the other good spells that I cared about in this combat. However, that means that the Orcs are re-rolling failed hits in close combat. So. After combat with the chariot and the pump wagon does like kills 5 errant knights on the charge. The chariot manages to kill 2 errant knights with impact hits. I didn't even remember to roll my actual attacks. I was so flabbergasted by this. The guys in base combat cause a couple wounds in return to the chariot. However, the knights errant, even with everything, are testing on Snake Eyes. They break, flee, are caught by the chariot. Both units overrun into the Realm Knights unit. And then, in the combat with the Men-at-Arms and the Night Goblins, I forgot to roll nets. It didn't make a huge difference, so they killed they killed 1 Night Goblin or 2 or 3 Night Goblins, I forget. They killed 3 Savages, I think, which is actually a very surprising showing for Men-at-Arms. But we went through them like crazy. Savages going nuts. So between, re-rolling failed wounds and all that, the Men-at-Arms are testing on Snake Eyes because the Night Goblins are so deep. They break, they flee from the Night Goblins, and they are run down by the Savages. And that's the disposition of the board at the end of Orc turn 2. Here's a wide-angle shot. You can see that there's the Mounted Yeomen are threatening the Ballistas. The Chariot and the Pump Wagon are in the flank of the Realm Knights unit, and the rest of my units are all kind of pulled out of line now that they were chasing the fleeing Men-at-Arms. Here's a close-up of the Realm Knights. The questing knights fail to rally, flee through both trebuchets. They do not panic the first one, but they do panic the second one. The Pegasus Knights fly over the squigs to threaten the Orcish artillery. And in close combat, he gets Curse of the Midnight Wind off on the Chariot and gets Harmonic Convergence off on the Realm Knights. So the Realm Knights are re-rolling all 1s into hit, to wound, and armor saves, and the Chariot must re-roll all 6s. Pretty bad news. The Realm Knights block has enough characters that they're more than equipped to handle these sort of just impact hits type units. But now the deal is sealed by these hexes and augments. In shooting, the Trebuchet lands on the Savages and kills a few more. The Realm Knights easily defeat both the Snotling Pump Wagon and the Wolf Chariot, and then reform to face the combat unit. The Mounted Yeomen charge one of the Ballistas, kill it, overrun into the other. Spear Chuckers, pardon me. So this is what the board looks like at the beginning of Orc turn 3, end of Bretonnia turn 2. I reform with all the units. The Squigs just flip around to face the Realm Knights. The Savages turn around to face the Realm Knights. And the Night Goblins turn to immediately face them. That was a poor decision on my part. There's no way when Anthony has his charge declared that he's going to still be where he is right now. I really wasn't thinking. I guess I kept them there just in case. But I would have liked them to be facing into that sort of box of death there between all 3 of those units. So that's something to keep in mind going forward. Actually, I wanted to move them back a little as well so that they'd have more visibility, but they failed their test to swift reform. In the shooting phase, I plink a few more Realm Knights with the Spear Chuck on the hill right next to them. Hits all 3 going through sideways. Kill 3 more knights. In the magic phase, I really don't have anything I can get off. I have 1 spell. Whatever I roll, Anthony just chucks all his dice at it, and that's the end of my magic. In the shooting phase, the Rock Lobber lands on the closest trebuchet. That is the absolute utmost extent of its reach. Stone throwers have a 60-inch range, and that's 60 inches just on the edge of the trebuchet. However, it lands on target and does enough wounds to kill that trebuchet. The Mounted Yeoman defeats the Spear Chucker and reforms to face it. You'll notice that there were 3 before. There's 1 left. They've been taking casualties to the crews. And the beginning of Bretonnia turn 3, he charges that other Spear Chucker. The Peg Knights charge the Spear Chucker on the far side. And he declares a charge with the Realm block into the Savages, going as far to the left as possible, so he's contacting both of my characters in that unit. Now this is a problem because the Night Goblins do not have visibility on this unit at all to attempt a countercharge. The Questing Knights, however, do rally before they run off the board. And he gets Ice Shard Blizzard off on the Savages, so they are now -1 to hit and -1 to leadership, and Harmonic Convergence off on his own unit. One of those wound markers is on his general. I believe that he took 1 wound at some point in the combat. Maybe it was against the Black Orcs. I can't really remember, but he had 1 wound going into this combat with the Savages. And the other wound is on the Damsel, who had taken a wound, I believe, due to a miscast. In his shooting phase, a Trebuchet lands dead on in the middle of the Squig herd. And what's interesting about this is that it only hits the handlers instead of Squigs on a 5 or 6. But as you can see, he really did a number on those handlers. There are only 4 handlers left. If that unit ever falls below, ever has no handlers, ever has all Squigs but no handlers left, it explodes and does a bunch of strength 5 hits within 2d6 inches. So, with 14 of them, I like, for example, when I've been playing against this army with my Empire, I have never considered it even a remotely reasonable goal to attempt to shoot this unit to death. However, with that 1 lucky Trebuchet shot, there's a very high chance that if it lands on target again, it's going to kill off those remaining 4 guys. A third of all the wounds it caused should be allocated onto the handlers. The Pegasus Knights killed that Spear Chucker, but failed their check to restrain and reform and flee off the table, so we put them on the edge they were facing back on for when they would come back on. And the crew of this Spear Chucker defeat the remaining Mounted Yeoman, although he does do 2 wounds to them in the process. There's 1 wound left on that Spear Chucker, but the Mounted Yeoman have been defeated. In close combat, his Lord Heroic Killing blows my level 4, who fails his ward save, and then the other guys kill 1 more Savage. I believe that I lose combat. However, I'm leadership 8 with a reroll, and I make it. He reforms with his knights to get as many guys in base contact as possible. In the beginning of the Orcs' turn, however, I pass my animosity check with the Night Goblins and fail my animosity check with the Squig herd. And on a 2 through 6, that's not a problem. The Squig herd still has to charge right into the rear of those knights. However, I roll a 1, which means the closest unengaged unit that is subject to the animosity rules, they throw dung at them and start picking fights with them. So the Squig herd picks a fight with the Night Goblins, even though the Night Goblins had previously passed their check. The Squigs do 2d6 strength 3 hits to the Night Goblins, the Night Goblins do d6 strength 3 hits to the Squig herd, and both units cannot act this turn. This is terrible. I had him set up for a perfect rear charge with the Squigs. That's a ton of strength 5 attacks. That's something like 30 or 35 strength 5 attacks on that unit. And now I can't do anything. The Savages have been beaten in close combat, so they've lost their frenzy. I won't even have a rank bonus on him pretty soon if he keeps killing them the way he's been going. Here's a better picture of that combat between the Realm Knights unit and the Savages. I cause an additional wound to the Lord. The Lord kills my BSB with a heroic killing blow, kills a bunch of Savages. I hold and reform so that I gain additional ranks, so that hopefully I'll be steadfast for a little longer. In Bretonnian turn 4, the Questing Knights declare a charge against the rear of the Savages. They need pretty much boxcars to get it. They fail and move up a few inches. The Pegasus Knights fly back onto the board after having, overran off the board last turn. They're positioned where they are so that they're within the minimum range of both the Doom Diver and the Stone Thrower and cannot be targeted. However, in his shooting phase, he lands a rock from his Trebuchet on the Squig herd and successfully manages to kill 4 more herders. There are now no herders in that unit, and the Squigs run wild. It does 2d6 strength 5 hits, or maybe it's just d6 strength 5 hits, +1 for each 5 models in the unit. So it's +4 from the 20 Squigs, plus whatever I roll for each unit. At the end of the day, it causes a few wounds to the Savages, causes a few wounds to the Knights. After combat, the Realm Knight unit has been completely eliminated. He has his BSB, his Paladin, and his Lord with 2 wounds already. I think I lose combat here, actually, when you take into account the wounds caused by his unit. And I need a 7, and I make it. Here's a close-up picture of this combat between the Bretonnian Lord, 2 Paladins, and the depleted unit of Savage Orcs. In the next turn, we kill the Bretonnian Lord. We put 1 wound on one of the Paladins. Anthony needs to roll a Snake Eyes to stay. Or actually, I don't think he needed to roll a Snake Eyes. He just needed to roll well, and he rolled a Snake Eyes, so the Bretonnians hold. Here's what the board looks like in total at the end of that combat phase. In Orcs, this is probably turn 5. The Rock Lobber misfires, won't be shooting again for the rest of the game. And the Savages get beaten pretty soundly in that combat. These guys have a 1-up rerollable, and the Savages are strength 4. So it doesn't really matter how many wounds they do. They won't, they're not going to get past a 1-up rerollable armor save or a 2-up rerollable armor save in this case. The Night Goblins, however, reform to face the flank of these 2 characters. The Questing Knights declare another charge, I believe, and fail. The Pegasus Knights declare a charge on the Doomdiver or Rocklopper, I forget. In close combat, my luck finally runs out. The Savages fail their check after causing no wounds and taking a bunch of wounds from these 2 characters and flee. However, both characters do not roll high enough to catch them, so the Savages get away. Beginning of Orc turn 6, I declare a charge with the Night Goblins on the character unit. It was probably safe enough for Anthony to have fled from these Night Goblins. However, I think he felt that with a 1-up rerollable, a bunch of Night Goblins really weren't a big threat. The Savages rally, however, they remain facing that way to receive a charge from the Questing Knights. In close combat, the Night Goblins cause no wounds to the character unit. The character unit only kills like 1 or 2 Night Goblins, I forget. I have a flank, a standard, a charge, and 3 ranks. They have their wounds and their battle standard. It is a mediocre roll to stay, but they don't make it. They flee and are run down by the Night Goblins. In Bretonnian shooting, he lands a treb shot on that remaining spear chukka and destroys it, and then declares a charge with the, or he had declared a charge, pardon me, with the Questing Knights on the Savages. However, the Savages still go before the Questing Knights, as the Questing Knights use great weapons and have always strikes last, and they kill 3 of the Questing Knights before they even have a chance to strike. That remaining Questing Knight does not cause enough wounds and flees and is run down by the Savages. We didn't take a picture of it because that's where we called the game right there. This was down to the absolute last turn, and even so, the victory was only within a couple hundred points. If any of those major turns were something serious, serious chain of events had happened, this game could have gone either way. If the character unit had run down the Savages when they broke from combat, for example, that Savage unit is very expensive with that many Savage Orcs with 2-hand weapons and all that. If he had chosen to flee from the Night Goblins instead of holding against that charge, it's almost certain he would have gotten away and probably rallied with those 2 characters and their ability to, and their relatively high leadership. Even so, this was a tremendously fun game. It was nice to try 2 armies against each other. I've never played Orcs, and I've played against them a few times, but I've never played as them. It's very interesting. Animosity is extremely frustrating. But all in all, I'd say this was a tremendously fun game. Really on the ropes. Every turn, somebody, there was a major upset or something strange happened. It was a really interesting way to use this new terrain. We didn't make any, didn't take any real advantage of, like, say, going into buildings or anything like that, but just getting off the standard table that we usually play with a little more variety was pretty fun. More than a few times I had to resort to a little psychological warfare, such as when Anthony was making attacks or rolling spells or something against the Savage Orcs. I just figured I'd get into the spirit a little and do a little chanting of Ooga Chaka, as if the Savages were channeling their orcish energy for the sole purpose of throwing Anthony off his game. It was really fun, and I'm very grateful to for him letting me use his army. I will say I can definitely understand a lot of Anthony's frustration with this army. Animosity is one thing. Ranking up over like 150 or 200 models every time you want to play. That's murderous. That's goodness gracious. The Squig herd alone is just a ridiculous unit. In any event, victory for the Orcs and Goblins, not by much, but still a victory. And I hope you guys enjoyed this battle report. Have a good one.